Hi class, we are looking at lesson 3.9, which deals with the Pythagorean theorem. In this lesson, we'll be using Pythagorean theorem to solve problems, usually finding a missing side of a right triangle, and also to prove that we have a right triangle. So the Pythagorean theorem is, in any right triangle, the sum of the squares of the lengths of the legs is equal to the square of the length of the hypotenuse. In other words, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. The converse says that if a triangle has side lengths a, b, and c, and a squared plus b squared equals c squared, then the triangle is a right triangle with a hypotenuse of c. A couple of things. You have to remember c is always the hypotenuse, as well as this only works in right triangles. So if a squared plus b squared equals c squared, you know you've got a right triangle. And if you're told you have a right triangle, then you can use Pythagorean theorem to help find a missing side, whether it be a leg or the hypotenuse. Okay, now what is a hypotenuse? The hypotenuse is the side opposite the right angle. So if you have this drawing here, here's our right angle. So the side opposite that is always going to be the hypotenuse, which is C. It's always going to be the longest side. Legs, you've got two of them, right? And they're holding up the right angle. So those are going to be your legs. A conditional statement is like an if-then statement. So if this, then this. The hypothesis is the if part of the conditional statement, and then the conclusion is the then. So think a little bit in science here. Converse switches the if-then around. Sometimes the converse is true, but not always. It's like saying all rectangles are squares. Is that true? All squares are rectangles, yes, but the converse, all squares are, or all rectangles are squares, is not. Okay, so the converse switches the if and the then around a little bit. All right, let's look at some examples. All right, so here we have a triangle with a leg of 8 and a leg of 15. So if we use a squared plus b squared equals c squared, we can, because we know it's a right triangle. So let's compute. Let's plug in the 8 for the A and 15 for the B. Now, does it really matter if we put 8 for A? No, it doesn't. As long as we put them in for the legs. Okay? So then we square the 8 and we square the 15. And we add them together. And we get 289 equals c squared. So now if we take the square root of that, and we're going to take the square root of both sides, we should get a length of 17. Now, why am I not using the negative here? Because it's a real-world situation, and in this case, I'm only looking for the principal root. Moving on to the second example here. Now we're going to use Pythagorean theorem to determine if we have a right triangle. So I'm going to put a 5 in for both A and B, and the 7 in for C. Going to square the 5, and square the second 5, and that should equal 49. Well, 25 plus 25 equals 50, not 49, right? 49. So then, no, this is not a right triangle. This is not right, okay? Should be not right, not no right. Not right triangle, because 50 does not equal 49, okay? Let's check the next one. And again, it's important that you use the longest side as your C. So we have 100. 24 squared is 576. And 26 squared is 676. Well, 576 plus 100 is 676, and 676 equals 676, so therefore we know we have a right triangle here, okay? Because a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Let's go on to a physics problem, okay? So we have two forces pulling at right angles, okay? Here's a little diagram. So we have one force B, which we're told is 120 pounds, and we have force A, which we're told is 50 pounds. So the result is the 130, okay? All right, so we're trying to prove whether these two forces, the 120 and the 50-pound forces, whether they're pulling at a right angle. So we can, forces work the same as the Pythagorean theorem. We're going to try 50 squared plus 120 squared equals 130 squared, okay? If it's true, then our result, then these two forces are pulling at a right angle. If they're not pulling at the right angle, the forces aren't going to act and result in the Pythagorean theorem being true. So if we take 50 squared, we get 2,500, okay? And if we square 120, we get 144,000, so 14,400. If we square the 130, we get 16,900, okay? Does 2,500 plus 14,400 equal 1690? 16,900? Yes, it does. So we know the forces are pulling at a right angle. Forces are pulling at right angle. Okay? Good job. Moving on. Go ahead and try the quick checks and then check your answers. So in the quick check number 1, we are given length of leg 7 and 24. We're trying to find the hypotenuse. That should be 25 centimeters there. If you have a triangle with legs 10, 24, and 26, does it make a right triangle? Yes, because if you use Pythagorean theorem, 10 squared plus 24 squared should equal 26 squared. In this case, we have a force of 70 and 60, and we're trying to see, the result is a 100-pound force. We're trying to see if they are pulling at right angles or not. In this case, a squared plus b squared does not equal c squared, so that tells us that they're not pulling at right angles. Good job. Let me know if you have any questions. Please email me or ask in class. Thanks.